Sorry, I'm in the dark. Hey everyone. I just realized that that, like I said, I'm in my special bunker for the trade deadline, which is called, aka the Shore House, which is so I have because the 4th of July weekend is always we're down here, so it's always tied to this. So I always watch everybody go outside and play, while I sit in here. I realized in the back that there's a pile of dirty clothes behind me here. I realized I threw a towel over top of it, like our American flag towel. It looks like there's a body back there, it looks like
You got to come up with a better description than bunker. Every time, since I'm a history guy, every time I hear bunker, I think of Hitler at the end of the war.
Yeah, it's not like that, but yeah.
Well, these are really pleasant thoughts, Mike. Do you have something more pleasant than that?
Well, no, not really pleasant for me, but it's like the travails of driving back and forth from Buffalo to Toronto over the last 6 days because of the development camp, and then yesterday because of the July 1st. I ran into it's Canada Day weekend, so you knew that it was going to be really busy, and I was on the road for like 3.5 hours on Thursday or 2.5 hours on Friday. And yesterday, driving up, no problem. Driving back, no problem, until I got to Niagara Falls, which is where I normally cross. And the exit was clear. I pull off. And then, of course, I realized when it's too late that everybody in a T-shirt and shorts were heading to Niagara Falls for the fireworks on Canada Day. And it took me an hour and a half to get that normally takes me 5 minutes to get from the exit to the bridge, where there was nobody going over to the U.S., but there was such congestion that I could not get to the U.S. It was just the most frustrating thing. So thankfully, after 6 days in a row, I will not be going up to Toronto for probably a month or so, unless it's for a Blue Jay Yankee game or something like that. But
that's just another day on the LIE. I'm sure Islander fans feel real bad for you today, Mike.
Yeah, and we were talking about baseball before we went live, and Kevin, it's like the Yankees and Red Sox with big 3-game series this weekend, and they play a bunch of times before the end of the year. But it was, by the way, it was not. It didn't live up to any expectations because it was 3 blowouts. It was like 11-1. 11-1 yesterday, 11-0 on Saturday, and the game on Friday was a blowout too. So, these teams are so evenly matched. I don't know. There's not
out there, and networks need to realize that and stop falling back to these regional games that not the whole country cares about anymore. That's what they need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it was sort of disappointing. I mean, that was one of the things I was sort of racing back home to watch, and then, I'm very happy that the Yankees slammed the Red Sox and hit like 5,000 home runs. But there was by the 5th inning, I was like flipping through Twitter looking for more trades and signings. So anyway,
all right.
Okay, ready to go, Ek?
I'm back. All right. Wasn't that I wasn't finding your conversation enthralling.
You sure you were? It was baseball. It bored the hell out of
you. Qualifiers for the World Cup is much better. Yeah.
The kids left their bathing suit in your side. They were running out there. Anyway, that's all. We're good. Excellent.
Like, who the heck is, speaking of soccer, like, who do you root for when Brazil plays Mexico? I can't root for either of those teams. So
Kevin, I'm going to Mexico. And my pool, I need Brazil to win, but in my heart, I want Mexico.
Yeah,
I just like the Mexicans when they found the South Korean guy, and took him on his shoulders and ran. That made me a Mexican fan. I'm like, I'm going for the Mexicans now. That's my team.
Yeah. The problem I have with Brazil, it stems from all my years when my son was playing at a high level, and I get it that it's cultural, but the way they play soccer is just completely different than the way we play in North America. Now, obviously, you can say they play a better brand of soccer than we play in North America. But saying all that, they also, they play in such a way that we would call it cheating.
Yes.
And it's just hard on me to kind of sort that all out. I mean, they don't see it that way, but
I've had this discussion with somebody when my daughter was playing this time last year. We were in Europe playing. I got in this discussion about, we played a team that was from Austria, and Austria's not, Brazil, but they were falling down. They were falling all over the place. And as a hockey fan, it just infuriates you to no end. Like I think there's nothing worse than a hockey fan watching this. I think of all sports, like this is, come on, like if you're gonna fall, then don't cry. If you're gonna If you're gonna hit someone, then accept getting hit back. These are all basic hockey rules, right? Like that we just
right.
I think half the hockey fans in the world aren't watching it because they don't like soccer.
As a big fan of Schadenfreude, I took 4 years ago the distinct pleasure at Germany destroying Brazil. What was it, 8-1? I mean, it was so beautiful. But the thing is, I don't really have a hate on for Brazil, but there is that sort of like snootiness of them that, oh, we're the best. Yeah. I mean, you had Pele, I get that, but geez, I mean, you're not God's gift.
They play high level. I do like soccer, as you guys know, but
I've grown to like.
I just don't. I just haven't. Appreciated their style of play. I try to put myself in their perspective.
I know, I do. It's so funny.
That's the way. That's the way they play. But my son played college soccer, and he had a couple of Brazilians on his team. And one of my craziest memories of his college career was the time his team was leading, and I believe it was like 4-1. And he had 3 Brazilian players on his team, and there was a penalty kick, and 2 of them argued of who was going to take the kick in a 4-1 game. Like they were just really aggressively arguing about who was going to take the kick, and I thought, like, wow, I was just stunned with that.
Oh man.
Although the chat room's finding this soccer talk scintillating, I think.
All right, we'll move on.
Let's move on. Yeah, I agree.
I got more good stuff about soccer, but we'll move on.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing before we start basketball, I got to touch base on this.
No, we're not starting basketball.
I just got to do one thing with the LeBron James thing that I found unbelievable, and this is tied to hockey. Okay, so the difference between a hockey player and a basketball player was so evident by the meetings taken in California by John Tavares and LeBron James. Like he was okay, so. The 76ers flew out there yesterday, and I'm barely following this, but this is all over the news. They flew out there yesterday to meet with LeBron James. They're prepared to put $120 million on the table, or 130 or whatever, for 4 years on the table for this guy. And the news is the Sixers are flying out today to meet with LeBron James's team in California. LeBron will not be attending the meeting. And he did not. He didn't attend it. So here you have. It's like, to me, that is just unbelievable. First of all,
that actually makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah, me too. I don't even get that.
No, but I mean, Tavares sat there and did Boston and Dallas. I mean, or what Tavares says, Boston and Dallas had to be long shots in Tavares' eyes. But he sat there and he talked to them and he took notes with everybody who spoke to him. That's what I'm trying to say is the difference.
I think if Jonathan Tavares. Here's the thing. LeBron's been through that so many times. This is Tavares' first chance. He deals with this. He can't walk into a Starbucks without dealing with something. Tavares could basically walk through New York City and no one would know who he was. I mean, that's just the way it is. And so with Tavares, right, you have to kind of think about a couple things of this. Is he probably really wasn't thinking about a lot of this through the course of his career. LeBron basically has this legacy. He's arguably, depending on who you follow in basketball, better than Jordan and what you want to discuss. Like, he thinks about this all the time of what his legacy is going to be. Tavares is thinking, how do I even get a sniff of a game of a Stanley Cup championship series? LeBron's thinking, right? Like, it's just a totally different thing. LeBron doesn't have to be there. Tell me what you're going to do to make this team a championship team and all show up.
Unfortunately, it's too easy to be able to maneuver yourself into a championship in that sport if you're a great player, because you're one of 5, and once you get 2 more guys that go with you,
right,
you can do that.
Yeah. Well, the NBA is a massive problem. It is a massive problem that way.
Well, I don't know if we're going to just skip the intro and go right into the show, but I have to say this. Well, being in Toronto yesterday and being in the scrum with Tavares, he was very respectful towards the Islanders, and you could see the emotion on his face when he was talking about his 9 years there and wanting to stay. I think there was a want to stay there, but the whole situation in Long Island with the buildings, with the 9 years that, and I'm not saying he wasted them, he got paid, but I'm saying it used up the young part of his career in his prime, and there wasn't any progress, and the uncertainty of that organization, even with Lou and Barry Trotz, I mean, those things sort of made him look at other situations, and maybe in the last 48 hours things changed.
Show, Mike?
What?
You mean those issues that I brought up on this show?
Yes. Well, no. I mean, I as I said to you yesterday, Russ, you kept saying that. I was convinced, like Stamkos and like other free agents, that he was going to use other teams and stay in Long Island and get the big payment. And he decided that he needs to go someplace else now, Toronto, where he has a better chance to win. And I'm surprised.
I'm surprised he left too, because he does come across certainly as a guy who's loyal, and I think he did have loyalty to the Islanders. But I wrote my column yesterday where I said, look, this is no one's fault but the Islanders because they simply didn't do enough. Yeah. If you look at the history of free agents in the NHL, they stay. That's what they do. They stay. They're loyal guys. They want to be part. They've been part of a team. They want to build it. But in Tavares' case, Lamoriello and Barry Trotz, in his mind, was too little too late.
Yes.
Like, he had gone through so much, and even with Lamoriello, as magical as he may be, it's still going to take time. The arena is still going to be messy for a couple of years, as Russ pointed out continuously. When it all just added up, he had had enough. And, if we're going to blame people, you got to start with Garth Snow, and you got to start with ownership. And, they should have been worrying about this even
2 years ago. Garth Snow should have gone to whoever the owner was and gotten this locked down for the sake of the franchise. And that's what I was telling people last night. You can't blame this on the player. It's not his fault.
No, for sure. No. Because we all try to do what's best for us in our own everyday.
Exactly. And Russ, you've been saying this for how long? Like, I mean, you've been going, you've come at it from every side and every angle for a long time. And Kevin, you've chimed in when you've been on the show too about this. This isn't about the 21 players playing hockey at any given time. This is about everything else that is a complete and utter mess with that franchise. And like, I wouldn't want to play there either, given the state of what they're doing. Figure out what you're going to do, go into the communities, get it done, and move along. Well, that's what you have to do. Edmonton got it done.
Yeah, I have to say that if Tavares didn't go someplace, and I'm not saying Toronto, but if he didn't go someplace other than the Islanders, I would say give up on free agency, because on what was there and what was available elsewhere, even the long shots, even Dallas, even Boston, was so much better in terms of the structure of the team, the future going forward, the chances of winning the Stanley Cup, that if he goes back to the Islanders, all he does is he's letting himself, I think, waste the rest of his career. I mean, I think Lou is going to reorganize that team, and they'll get on the right track, but that's going to take 2 or 3 years. It's not going to be something instantaneous.
That's what I was trying to point out. This is a much bigger job with this team than it was the Leafs. I know people looked at it as a similar job. It is not a similar job.
Very different job.
Our job is much tougher. There's a lot of other things to overcome. And everybody was like, well, Lou's going to wave a magic wand and it's all going to be better. And it's like, no, it's not.
I mean, the Leafs are totally set franchise. They're in a completely, defined area. They have a stadium. Perfect.
And he'll do it differently too. Like, it's not impossible for him to get this thing moving in the right direction. I mean, they got Barzal, Anders Lee's a good player. They got some players.
They're at like $51 million cap wise. Like, they're going to be a lottery team this year.
Well, Russ, that's why they signed Leo Komarov for $3 million a year and gave Valtteri Filppula a no move clause on a deal. I mean, like, what?
Well, they didn't. The guy they didn't get, which people said maybe they were going to get, is James Neal, who signed with the Flames. So the one point about Tavares, which I think is interesting and always needs to be brought up too, is it's not always this. People say, well, you want a better chance of winning, but it's hard to know where to go. And I keep pointing this out. Like, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like, I'm a big believer in where they're at. I don't love their defense, obviously, and I think they need to make a move there. But are they more likely to win a championship than the Boston Bruins? Like, I
think conventional thinking will say yes, but I get your point.
Well, exactly. You just don't know. Like, in the old days, you could identify 3 or 4 or 5, and with the parity we have now,
But
like,
you know they have a better chance than the Islanders. You know that.
Well, yes, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. So my point at all is I think this is what comes in, like all the other factors come into play. Like I think you can identify a group of teams, and it's not small, a group of teams who have a chance of winning.
Yeah.
But the other factors now become greater. And what I found most interesting was the photo of John Tavares in the Maple Leafs blanket.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Now I bring that up because I thought that would be a negative, that he wouldn't want to get back in that fishbowl. But to him, that was an incredible positive. It was really clear to him.
Well, Kevin,
and a lot of guys don't want to deal with that. Steven Stamkos didn't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really clear. Sorry, Mike. The one thing that we're seeing that's really clear is now without Tavares, the Islanders are not a team players want to necessarily go and play for. They're going to look at every other option before they go to the Islanders, and that's why they're having trouble getting any kind of good free agents right now.
Well, yeah, a really interesting battle going on between the Islanders and the Leafs right now as we speak, and that is
here we go.
That is for Calvin DeHaan, right? And that's what I've been hearing today.
Well, yeah, but amongst other teams,
amongst other teams. But I keep hearing, I'm hearing that he's leaning towards the Toronto Maple Leafs right now. But I know the Flyers pulled out of DeHaan because the price was getting crazy. So I wonder how if the Leafs can do this.
Well, that's the thing. If the Leafs sign and that's DeHaan has got 4 or 5 teams. I think you retweeted Brian Lawton's or mentioned Brian Lawton's report that there was like 4 teams down and Toronto may be one of them. But the thing is, if the market bears what DeHaan is looking for, it's probably $4.5 million on a multi-year deal. And the Leafs, if they do that, that basically means that Jake Gardiner is gone because they can't sign DeHaan to a lengthy contract and then re-sign Gardiner. And to my mind, that means either you're trading Gardiner or you're just keeping him through the year and you're letting him walk in free agency. And I don't know whether I think, and Kyle Dubas said this yesterday in the scrum that I was in, all of a sudden with them getting Tavares, he's saying that veteran players out there are lowering their prices a little bit to come in on a short-term basis. And I would look at a guy like Dan Hamhuis, who played for Babcock and Sochi in 2014. Who
basically had 2 minutes of ice time a game.
Right. Well, right. But he still liked him, Peter. And the thing is, he's not over the hill. He had 24 points with Dallas last year. He's still an effective defender. And if they go 1 year on him, I think that's an avenue that they would probably go down rather than give DeHaan 4 years at $4.5 million.
The looming time bomb with the Leafs, though, Mike, is they have to find a solution to what their defense is and be able to pay that solution for term. And Hamhuis may get you in for a year and be a temporary solution.
Yeah, stopgap. Yeah,
the solution. And this is going to hinder the Leafs. And I saw you favored the tweet I said yesterday is the Leafs now have 3 of the top 8 centers who have scored 30 goals in back-to-back seasons. But given the way Mike Babcock coaches, he's now going to run his 3 centers, Kadri, Matthews, and Tavares, much like he probably did in Sochi in 2014, because he has no defense.
Right.
He has none. And it's now the Leafs have assets to play with.
Yes, and that
the ability to do something. This is what's like. Tell you the honest truth, getting Tavares wasn't, I don't think, a major coup for Dubas as much as it was a coup for him to keep him from going to another team.
Yeah.
That's the coup. The coup for Dubas is going to be how he solves the defense and if he can bring in the true stud right-hand D. That's going to be his mark.
Yeah, and they have wingers and they have goaltending depth that they might be able to turn, and draft picks that they can turn into a defenseman. And there have been names out there like Justin Falk. I mean, I'm not going to go through the litany of them because we don't know where they're going. But I think that's possible, and I also think they're buying time with some of the young defensemen that they have, like Liljegren in the minors. That they'll like he may be ready next year. He's not going to be ready this upcoming season, because he's 19 and he had an okay year in the AHL. So they're sort of buying time. So adding a ham use or adding a veteran guy might be what they can do right now. But yeah, I think they have to go out and get a defenseman, and there is talk about them making another deal or so. So I think that's where but Eck brought up the problem, and Eck, I'm sorry, I do not buy the offer sheet crap that
I'm not saying it's going to happen at all. I'm just saying that there were people I talked to this morning who said Lamoriello was really pissed off and said that Lamoriello to offer sheet Mitch Marner in retaliation and screw.
Yeah, come on. I mean,
even Bob McKenzie was saying that there is a likelihood of more offer sheets this year.
No, that's not what he said.
What did he say?
What did he say?
I thought he said that even though he never really, there's no history of it and everything else, he just thought it's been talked about more. I thought.
Yeah, sorry. That he said there was more talk of the possibility.
I'm just saying now. Are we going to have a vengeful Lou?
No, because
here's what Mike brought up though is, and this does get glossed over. So they do need to bring in that defenseman this year, Mike, because Hainsey will be gone next year.
Yes, and Gardner too. Gardner's a UFA.
And so this is a 2-year failing of the Shanahan plan of not being able to bring in that Noah Hannafin or anybody like that. It is a failing. You could say
no. It's a 2-year failing of Lou because
Lou's gone, so you can't blame Lou anymore.
No, Russ.
Hold on. Shanahan's been there this entire time, guiding the ship. This is what he has not been able to do. If they want to win a Stanley Cup, he has to be able to do this.
He tried. You got
to remember things. Shanahan's the architect. He's designed the building.
Sure.
And he's responsible to the owners, the investors of that building, of how it's going to get built. He assigned Lou and Dubas to be the contractors. You've got to find these pieces and put it together. Yes, it trickles down to Lou and to Kyle Dubas, but Shanahan's got to own some of it. The bigger thing is when you look at that thing, not only has Shanahan not done this with the true right-hand D, he's got a contract in Zaitsev that is wildly debated about how that arrived, given the way the moves have done. So there's something there with that deal that may have cost Lou his job.
Well, I mean, I'm confident that Zaitsev can bounce back. He had a really good rookie year and there was a lot of stuff off the ice that was distracting with him, and that contributed to a bad sophomore year. But I think, Lou struck out on Hamonic at the draft in Chicago last June. He didn't want to pay the price for Ryan McDonough, and those were his judgments. I'm just saying, he had his finger in the pie of a lot of defensive situations and never pulled the trigger. I think that the Tavares deal with Toronto, I think that will allow Dubas to pull the trigger on something, because now they're one step closer to being a contender, and they know that they need that defender. So I agree with Russ. I think it'll be.
Let's move past what.
Sure.
Let's focus today more on what happened, because we have a lot of time to focus on what will happen coming forward, because I think we got to get focused in it. But the only thing I want to ask Kevin something about this situation we're talking about now, in terms of what happened. Now that Tavares is there, Matthews is there, Babcock is there. We're already hearing the Babcock Matthews stuff before this was happening about ice time. Babcock and how he handles the situations better than I think anybody on the planet. So, and the captaincy, Dubas is saying nobody. Kevin, how do you think this goes? How do you think Babcock will handle this moving forward?
Well, and I think you actually know the answer to this as well, because I remember you talked to Billy Lano about this very subject, and and I think he told you what we all noted in Detroit. When it comes to his top two lines, Babcock is pretty traditional, and that is that there'll be plenty of ice time for both Tavares and Matthews, and he basically leaves it alone. Like when he was in Detroit, once they're fully established, I think he's worked a lot with Matthews, and because he's young, but I think he'll sort of leave them alone. He tends to fool more with his third and fourth lines than he does his first and second. So I don't think there'll be any issue in that regard. I think the issues with Matthews, because he's young, are going to continue to exist. I think Babcock will be hard on him, but Tavares will find, that he'll leave him alone. Like Datsuk and Zetterberg, he had very little to say to them when he was in Detroit. In fact, I remember a great story where it was either Datsuk or Zetterberg was talking about how they were trying to sort out who was going to take faceoffs when he put them all on the same line, and he said, "I don't care, you work it out."
Right.
You guys are great players, and I think that's what he'll do.
But he's still managing Matthews right now. Like
It's not micromanaging Matthews, Zach. It really stemmed from Matthews being on the second power play in Toronto, and his sort of bristling against that and wanting to take on a bigger role. And my answer to that is their first power play was second in the NHL. So why are you going to mess with success? This year, maybe he jumps up to the first power play.
Yeah, I mean, you have it just, to me, there seems to be, I mean, the captain issue was brought up yesterday. Now to me, it's a logical thing to give Tavares the captain. See?
Yeah,
but at the same time, history has shown that generational players, like Matthews, get the captaincy very early in their careers usually.
Yeah, and
there are always with that. I mean, that because once you give it to Tavares, you can't really take it away. So is that why they're not giving it to anybody right now?
Yes, I think eventually Matthews is going to be the captain. It was discussed between Dubas, and apparently there was no mention of it in the Tavares presentation at all.
Okay.
He didn't want to come in and be the captain. He talked to Matthews, he talked to Marner, he talked to a couple other players that he knew, Patrick Marleau and Nazem Kadri. So he got the feel of the organization, and I don't think that Tavares is going to add to the pressure of coming to Toronto by demanding the captaincy. I think eventually it'll be Matthews, but I don't think it's a big deal. I think it's being more stirred up by the media, curious to see who's going to be the captain.
I think it's a fair thing to ask.
Well, it's going to be asked, and I don't
radically change the team.
Jerk about it. I'm just saying that I don't think we jerk about it. It's going to be asked. It's going to be an issue, and it's not going to be. But you also have two players, and I think you have two very good guys in Matthews and Tavares.
Yeah.
I don't think you have a problem. From that angle of things, I think you're fine.
It is a very fair question, but they won't be the first team, that has two great players and only one of them can be captain. I mean, the Penguins have Malkin and Crosby, and there can only be one captain.
Malkin doesn't care about being captain. Tavares liked being a captain. That's the only difference, though.
No, but it is. I mean, Eklund's question is fair because it's always an issue, but I think it'll just sort of resolve itself. And Matthews, I would guess, I don't know though. How do you tell John Tavares he's not a captain?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, to me, it almost feels like this feels like Taves and Kane to a degree. Like Taves is a captain through and through. Tavares is a captain through and through.
Yeah, no, you're right about that, but I think they'll work it out.
Yeah, they'll work it out. But I mean, I
think the really interesting dynamic here, though, is that Matthews is just going into his third season. And that's what's changed. This isn't the last time I recall something like this where you had a player of this stature coming in and sort of being handed the captainship, and it's probably happened since then, but this is my last recall because it hits home, was when Messier signed to Vancouver. And you had to get, how are you not going to let Mark Messier be the captain of the team? Now, we all know the disaster that turned into. And I'm not saying I'm not comparing what Messier was in that situation to this. But the difference is you brought Tavares in to take this team to the next level, to get where it hasn't been since, 2004, winning a playoff series?
2000. Winning a playoff series 04, getting past the first round 2002.
Yeah, right. So getting there and doing that, and you've got to give him the captaincy. And if Matthews doesn't like it or something, what are you supposed to do? You've got John Tavares, who's won a playoff series, who's dealt with all the adversity a franchise can throw at you in Long Island. How could you not give it to him?
I'm taking it at face value. He said that, he said to the media that he didn't ask for anything. It wasn't brought up. And I'm assuming that you're going to have Matthews, Tavares, and a guy like Patrick Marleau being associate captains, not having a full-time captain. And it'll sort itself out. Maybe Matt say
that. Tavares is going to say that because, he's a good captain, and that's what a good captain would say. But at the same time, I saw it in Philly. We had Mike Richards was the captain, and in walks Chris Pronger. How can you not make Chris Pronger a captain of a team? Remember that?
Right.
Pronger, it doesn't matter if you put a C on his shirt. Pronger is the captain of your team when he rides in the locker room. If
Max Pacioretty is traded at 12 noon, at 12:01, Shea Weber is the captain.
Right. There are certain things that, is
Vegas the new norm? I mean, they didn't have a captain, and they got to the Stanley Cup.
Right. If they are the new norm, then everything's out the window. Now I want to go to the next team that I think actually confused me more than any team yesterday, and that would be the St. Louis Blues. And I want to talk about the Ryan O'Reilly trade because this trade is beyond insane to me. I don't know. Granted, I'm not a big Ryan O'Reilly guy. I know that, but I know he's got talent. I know he's a good player. I'm watching him in the World Championships on the line with McDavid. He looked really good, but he's had a terrible year last year. I was hearing the word about him around the league was like he was a good signing before the NHL got fast, and he's not fast enough playing in a fast league. So he goes to St. Louis for a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and 3 players.
Right. Tage Thompson was a prospect, Sobotka, and Patrick Berglund. And the funny thing is, from the Buffalo perspective here, because if this was a salary dump, if that was one of the intentions,
they paid $7.5 million.
Right. Well, no, in salary they took back about the same amount, but the benefit here is Sobotka is only under contract for 2 more years. Berglund's under contract for 4, and O'Reilly's under contract for 5. And St. Louis paid the $7.5 million signing bonus. I mean, I think this is reflective of the fact that the Sabres, they, like I said, like we've been saying since the end of the season, they wanted to change the culture on that team. O'Reilly made that statement at the end of the year where he questioned the direction of the franchise, and there's still talk about Ristolainen possibly being moved, but they've changed over a lot of things. I just don't know how much of a benefit this deal is, because I think Sobotka and Berglund are sort of second, third line okay players. They're not difference makers, and O'Reilly potentially is a difference. He's more of a difference maker than the other guys are.
But you know what? Berglund and O'Reilly are not that dissimilar.
No.
And players. And you look at the salary, and the fact that Buffalo got a first and a second out of this.
First round draft pick in the Hughes draft again. Remember, so that's what we talked about Ottawa being so afraid of losing this draft pick. The Blues aren't sure to make the friggin' playoffs. I mean, the Blues they could go either direction right now.
But here's the Blues had to load up the Central. But Nashville did nothing. The Jets cleared salary cap space, but those are the top 2 teams in the league last year. So they may not be the top 2 teams this year, but they're going to be in your top 10 probably.
Look, Kevin, what are we missing here?
Colorado loaded up.
I want to know.
Dallas tried to get better. Chicago is doing things. And Minnesota tried again. I mean, the Central is still going to be an absolute dogfight, and St. knew they had to do something. The thing that O'Reilly will give them is he will take the tough opposition. That's what they will give them that I don't think they really had, is a guy who will go out and take defensive draws and be that guy. That's a lot of coin and a lot to give up for that one guy, but you say Buffalo $7.5 million too.
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, yes, Buffalo obviously did not want to pay that bonus. Like it was the one thing they didn't want to do on earth. So they made this trade. They look like they got a lot back. St. Louis saved almost $1 million in cap space. That's sort of lost in this. They did. They actually saved.
They did. Yeah,
so
you're right.
So there's if you want to look for a motivating factor besides getting a center who definitely could still play defense, win faceoffs, and get 55 points in this league, he could do that. So they got what they wanted. They upgraded everything but net. Like, this is still the problem with
yes.
Now, Billy Husso, maybe is better than Chad Johnson, but maybe Chad Johnson gives them what Carter Hutton gave him, but you're still hoping Jake Allen can do anything. And so I don't know about them. Buffalo got a lot of bodies.
Kevin,
on the future of Tage Thompson, who I think has a pretty good future here, but he's still developing. He's a power forward. Yeah. You're not going to see the best out of him for a couple more years. So it helped everybody a little bit.
Kevin, what's your read on this? Because, I mean, on top of the O'Reilly deal, they signed Tyler Bozak. And I like Tyler Bozak, but Tyler Bozak is the third-line center, and they signed him for 3 years at $5 million. So now they have him, and they have O'Reilly up the middle. And I'm not sure if they're any better than they were last year with Stastny before they traded him.
Yeah, it didn't end up being $5 million because I saw dueling reports there that Rutherford of the Athletic said it was $4 million and Johnson said it was $5 million. So I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't see a clarification. I saw $5, but I'll
check. Makes a big difference. But anyway, yes. I got a little bit different take on the O'Reilly thing. I disagree that Berglund and O'Reilly are comparable players. You know, O'Reilly's, you know, despite the characterization of having a bad year, and I think he would agree that he had a bad year last year, he's had 55, 60 points for 5 consecutive years. He's hard to play against. Like, I didn't see what the hurry was to trade O'Reilly, to be honest with you. I mean, there's center ice with Eichel and Middlestat and O'Reilly. You know, that's formidable if Middlestat develops quickly. Like that's, you know, that you can win with that trio. Now, saying all that, I thought they did really well in the return, like, you know, getting Thompson and, you know, a first-round pick. And, you know, I think Mike brought the point up that these guys aren't under contract as long as O'Reilly is. And I think there were some issues. I imagine the manager wasn't too pleased with what, you know, O'Reilly had to say at the end of the season. So there was a lot of factors at work here. But I understand why St. Louis made that trade, and I think it's certainly, you know, they were trying to find a center as soon as they traded Stastny last year, and you know now they've added 2 guys, you know, who can play for them. So I think it's an interesting trade, and I think it's going to be a while before we figure out who does well in that. But I think there is the Blues aren't rebuilding; they got to try to make the playoffs.
Right.
I think they're in better shape. Berglund, to me, has always been a guy that's never sort of lived up to expectations. And
they've tried to trade him a bunch, you know.
Yeah, he's been injured. So anyway, they gave up a lot, and it'll be interesting. I'm not sure I would have traded O'Reilly though. I might.
Cap friendly. Well, just Cap Friendly and Cap Central. Just wanted to clarify: the Cap Friendly and Cap Central both have Bozak at $5 million. So that's
Yeah. The point I was going to make about trading O'Reilly, and Kevin, I think you make some really valid points about whether that was a needed to do thing. Maybe there's a financial element that was sort of bugging the Sabres a bit, and I can understand that too, given what the expenditures they've had over the years of good money after bad. But the thing about, I look at this is you take O'Reilly out now, he's not a lot older than Jack Eichel, only 5 years. But if Middlestat's your next guy coming in, it closes your age gap a little bit too at an earlier age. And if you're going to start changing some things, now's the time to start doing it rather than waiting to see if O'Reilly is going to turn his game around or not, because you still got the age gap aspect of Middlestat, O'Reilly, and Eichel. And I have a hard time sort of saying if Eichel's your guy, how do you pay O'Reilly the same amount but use him differently given the way he was used in Buffalo? Yeah. And I think there's some logic to this to me to send him off to another team based on what Botterill might be trying to do now, that he's got a much clearer picture of where things align with that group.
Well, and I've said this, and I talked to Russ about this. I mean, to me, that the haste to trade O'Reilly was indicative of the Sabres being convinced that Middlestat can play center now at 19 years old. He's on his entry level for 2 more years. You know, they want, and if you surround him with veteran players, and then, you know, you bring in a Sobotka, you bring in a Berglund, if they're on his line, they sort of, you know, can protect him a little bit and give him some support. Then that's the way they want to go. I mean, obviously O'Reilly, I think O'Reilly was signed for them to be a competitive team now, and clearly they're going through a sort of a reset here, another rebuild under Botterill. So moving him out, I don't think it was, I think they could have gotten a better haul, but I understand the reason why, and I'm still convinced that if there's an opportunity for them to move Ristolainen and get something of equal value back, that they may do that too.
Well, they're going to bury Matt Molson this year, right? I mean,
yeah, that's honestly that's the most shocking thing. Matt Molson, a final year, a $5 million cap hit, a $3 million salary or money in. They didn't buy him out. Now maybe they buy him out if they have a player going to arbitration. There's a second buyout window,
right.
But I'm shocked that they didn't buy him out. And he probably has little or no chance to make the team, and that's going to be $5 million on your payroll or on your cap.
I think he's just going to get sent to the minors. They'll just have somebody else taking his spot. I think we could at least look at the Sabres and say, I believe they're better than last year. St. Louis might be exactly even.
Are you speaking of that, just real quick, Russ, what's your thoughts on since Jack Hughes is such a top prospect, is Buffalo still in the Jack Hughes sweepstakes?
I think right now they are. I think Buffalo's still in it. I think the Islanders are in it.
Yeah.
I think Carolina's in it.
Yeah, Detroit's in it for sure.
Detroit's in it. And yes, Jack Hughes is going to be another one of these generational guys. Don't look at what his frame is. Don't look at what his height is or how much he weighs, and don't worry about that stuff. Just worry about what he does on the ice, because nobody can seem to cover him. And so
I'd like to add in that I think Vancouver spent about $30 million yesterday to be in it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Canucks are in it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again,
all the wrong reasons, Kevin.
I do not understand the money that Vancouver spent on the players that they did. I like Antoine Roussel, but you paid over $3 million for the only guy he's the preeminent rat in the league. I mean, he makes sense for a team that's a contending team as an irritant, not for a team that's going to finish in 25th place.
They don't want to be a boring team, Mike. That's the thing. They want their fans to be entertained, and I think that's what they do.
Russ, I think you're giving them way more credit.
I'm just saying there can't be any other reason, Peter. So I'm making that one up.
Look, I don't want to like go off and be weird, but as someone who covered the Canucks for a long time, I'm from Vancouver. That's my home, and I always said if I had to choose between the Jets and the Canucks, I'd want the Canucks to win in Game 7 in overtime. Right? Like that's just, you stick with the team that brought you to the dance, right?
You had that chance already, Peter.
What's that?
You had that chance already.
Yeah, I know. Just don't remind me, okay? So the thing here is if you have to think about what Vancouver's trying to do, we talked about the Shanna plan and all these different things. Architect. Who's the architect of this team in Vancouver, and who are the contractors putting this design together? Like, you go from Toronto, who recognized we've done everything wrong for so long, trying to do things a certain way. We have to do this and be aggressive to get this down to the foundation and then start going. And then you got Vancouver. It's bewildering to watch what's happening there, because none of it makes sense. It's like trying to make a Lego Death Star with one hand and a blindfold.
I like that. That's good.
Wow.
That's the best comment we've had thus far.
Yes, having built a Lego Death Star, I can tell you I actually did build one.
Well, Tavares had the X-wing fighter on his bed when in that picture that Kevin was talking about.
We have to bring up Calgary. Everybody wants to talk about that.
But Calgary?
Yeah.
All right. Well, James Neal and Calgary. Obviously, this came down to James Neal and Pat Maroon, right? So this is everybody. So they went with James Neal, right?
Yeah, I'm still surprised Vegas didn't re-sign him.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think they looked at the contract, Kevin. They said,
"Oh, that's right."
Yeah, I think McPhee said, "Look, I mean, we love James Neal, but he's not going back to 81 points. He's a 45, 50-point guy.
Yeah,
what are we paying for that?"
And it's 5 years. Among the most puzzling contracts out there that were signed here, the Ian Cole deal for $4.25 million. I mean, I think Ian Cole's a fine defenseman, but 3 years at $4.25 million, I question. The length of the James Neal deal.
It had to be because the bidding got there, you know.
Well, I know, but I mean, unless it's extremely front loaded and he gets bought out after 3 years, I question what type of player he's going to be at 37 years old.
If you're Vegas, Kevin, what does it matter? I mean, it's like, okay, fine, it's a long deal. You know, the last couple of years could be.
Well, I mean, I this is my take on it, and knowing George McPhee a little bit, I think he's decided. Look, I don't want to get caught up in thinking we're better than we really were. That it's easy to do that because of the success they had. And I think, if under normal circumstances, like the thought process was they were going to trade James Neal last year and get something for him at the trade deadline.
Absolutely. They didn't win the cup, Kevin. I mean, come on.
No, they did not win the cup, but I agree with that. But I think that's, he's got to, you got to make room for younger players coming up and all that. And that was my read, just as Russ's were, is that he thought, under any circumstances, I wouldn't want to do this contract, even with the success we had. Like he's still at the floor, but that's going to be a tremendous asset for him. Like if Carlson is available as a free agent, I doubt he will be, but if he is, and if there are anybody available next summer, he's going to have all this cap space. And
I'll tell you what it's like. It would be like if this were, your birthday. If I was 10 years old, this was my birthday, and my dad said he's going to get me a bike, and he basically spent Schwinn money, and he came home with like a Raleigh. Like I would be like, "What are you doing?"
Such an old reference, Russ. I like it though. But just like bicycles, guys, were things we rode around on by ourselves years ago, and then Schwinn and Raleigh.
I know. But the point is, he's a 55-point guy in 100 playoff games. He's great in the room. So they basically paid a couple million extra a year for a guy who's great in the room.
I mean, if he was great in the room,
he's good in the room.
If he was great in the room, though, wouldn't McPhee worry that this is going to mess up something? Like, I mean,
no, because like for what Kevin said, McPhee also said that he was not going to act like a contender, and you would be acting like a contender if you matched a contract for James Neal, who technically they've got guys in 2 years in the minors that are, in juniors that could be better than James Neal.
Yeah, I mean they're going to try to find room. Cody Glass, and they got to move some guys.
They don't need to find room. They have space. They have time. They've got anything they want. I mean, it does make you think that they're going hard for Erik Karlsson. That's all I can think of.
No, it doesn't make me think that. It makes me think they're gonna, they're gonna play this one out. If they make the playoffs, great. If they don't, they're not going to be disappointed. Then in the next year, Cody Glass will come up, and another year after that, Nick Suzuki comes up. Like they got plenty of reinforcements.
Can I throw a metaphor out there, Russ, to match your price? It's a little bit, because I always like the boyfriend-girlfriend analogy. Okay. The Vegas Golden Knights are the girlfriend that is just awesome, and McPhee is the boyfriend who's incredibly hot, and no matter what the girlfriend does, the boyfriend will never think this is going to last. McPhee does not think. McPhee is still thinking this was. McPhee himself is saying that this was a fluke. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to build forward. And and what else can this girl do to prove that she? I mean, beyond winning the Stanley Cup, she's done everything she can to say that we should give this team another chance to stay together. I mean, it's to break this team apart. And if Neal is that great in the locker room, you're doing that. If he's not, then fine.
I think he's allocating his money, going to allocate his money on the players that, Neal is 31 or 32. I think he's 32. He's going to sign William Karlsson. He's going to, he spent his money on Paul Stastny. He's going to do what Russ was saying. He's going to depend on the young guys coming up. I mean, he really has to transition because this team was put together before the miracle was put together for them to transition some of these players to draft picks and prospects.
Stastny is a perfect example of what I'm saying. I mean, they went there with a James Neal deal.
But 3 years, Zach. It's only 3 years on Stastny.
It's a 3-year deal, and he is a better all-around player than James.
Right. I agree with that. He is, but he's not part of the magic. And to me, maybe I'm just
you can't do that 2 years in a row. We all know that.
Right, and a guy like
if they do it again this year, we'll say they can't do it. But I'm tired of saying the Vegas Knights are terrible.
But Eck, here's the thing. Like I see your point, and it's a valid one about that. I think George looks at it and he goes that they were a little bit lucky. But even when you got a championship team, you want to change it up a little bit before you go into the next year. And they didn't win a championship. They were close. Yeah. So you want to change it up a little bit. You want to change the hunger. You want to change the dynamic a little bit. You don't want complacency.
But wasn't one of their best scorers? I mean, do you change it up by getting rid of your best scorers?
No, but you can't romanticize the success that they had, and you could do one of two things. You can overspend on Perron and James Neal, and then 2 years down the road, when you're in 28th place and you're wallowing, and then you look back and say, okay, these were mistakes. You have to look at it dispassionately and add the players that you think are best going forward, and to add a guy in Stastny who's a center. Right. I think he provides support to a guy like Karlsson. I think it's a smart move. Now, let me just transition to one team that I didn't understand what they were doing is Minnesota. Okay, Eric Fair, Matt Hendricks, JT Brown, Greg Patterson. This is a team that is lost in the first or second round. They're close. They have some veteran guys. They have some good talent there, but they needed to, I think, make some sort of big move if possible, and all they did was little piddly character guys and this and that, and I just don't get it. I don't think they make progress at all with the signings that they made.
Well, I still think, and I'll let Kevin address this, I still think what I said yesterday, that what they did is Fenton brought in predator type players that were character guys that he thinks are the kind of guys that take you beyond, because the Wild are good enough to make the playoffs. They're good enough to be they're already solid, but he went and got the character guys that you need to win in the playoffs. I think that's what he did. Kevin, your thoughts?
Well, that's what he thinks he did. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think he was, just trying to change the room and the character culture and everything around it, because, we've talked about this before in the show. The Minnesota Wild are in that very troublesome situation of it's hard to put your finger on why they're not more successful.
Yes.
Right.
It's really difficult to know why. And I think right now they decided they were going to grasp at straws a little bit and, try to change some guys. When you bring in 4 guys, that's a significant number of players, a percentage on your roster. That's, so I'm sure that's what you're trying to do. Plus, there wasn't any obvious move for Minnesota to make in the free agent marketplace.
No,
I didn't see any.
Russ, do you think they doubled down on like Cunnin and Greenway and Eriksson Ek sort of like stepping up? And
well, I think Eriksson Ek they can depend on for more. Greenway, I'm not sure. I think Greenway is still going to take some time. Cunnin could be a guy that comes in there and gets them some goals. If he's healthy going into camp and preseason, he could make that team. He could make a difference because he does have a great shot. And that is another – if you could add another great shot to that team, that just may be what they need. Maybe you put Cunnin with Parise, something like that, and Parise feeds him a bit. That could be a big deal.
And my source in Minnesota said this, okay? And because I was asking somebody that I know there pretty well what they were doing. The kind of players that were available really weren't what we were looking for. We nibbled around the edges a bit, but nothing big so far. We may be done for now.
Okay. Well, and among the puzzling rumors out there, and it goes to both the two teams that we've talked about. I mean, the names of Spurgeon and Dumba's an RFA, have been out there supposedly in trade talk. And then Kevin, I don't get this. How is Colton Parayko out there in trade rumors? Because it doesn't make any sense.
I don't think he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
I've seen, discussions about that, and I don't, I've never had a GM say that Parayko was available.
Okay, good.
I'm gonna throw a big rumor out against you guys, okay? And it's a big one. So, and granted, it's a long shot, but it's an interesting one to just talk about, and then we're gonna get out of here.
Okay.
So the Islanders didn't announce anything that they did yesterday until very late in the day. Very strangely, it was very strange. Right now, I guess some of the players that they got, maybe they were flipping for O'Reilly. Perhaps that was possible, and they didn't want to make a big deal out of it. And they were definitely in on O'Reilly till the end. But they still have not addressed their goalie situation. And obviously, they took a big hit yesterday. Mm-hmm. They have a ton of cap space now, for obvious reasons.
Right.
Now, I talked to somebody today who said, "What about this? What about would it shock you if Lou came back today and said, we are getting Karlsson, Bobby Ryan, and Craig Anderson from the Ottawa Senators?"
Yes, I'll be 100% shocked.
Yeah, I'll be knocked over.
No, like they could. They're the only team that could actually do the Bobby Ryan Karlsson thing, like Vegas is doing.
Yes.
They need a goalie, and they have not made, like we say, none of these goalies seem to be. I mean, I've heard the only one I've heard, they continue to hear is Varlamov, possibly, but that's beyond that. I have not heard anybody interesting. But
well,
I think Anderson's a possibility for sure.
You think what?
I think Anderson is a possibility on Long Island, but
definitely.
the reason they won't trade for Carlson is he's not going to resign there.
Right.
Step one of the Erik Karlsson departure tour happened yesterday with the Senators tabling an offer for him, and there was dead silence from the Karlsson camp, which means it was an underwhelming offer.
Yeah, it's better than dead silence. The here's something from the article written. In terms of the offer were not disclosed. Asked about Karlsson's reaction to the offer, Dorian said, "We're not going there."
I mean, Jack, it's as clear as day. They made the offer to say, okay, we made the offer. He clearly doesn't want to stay here.
That's the response. What do you think of our daughter's boyfriend?
Right.
Not going there.
Right. But we knew they were going to do that. I give them credit for at least doing it so their fans can't say they didn't. Eck, you said the Wild didn't get anybody. They got Andrew Hammond. You got to do your homework.
Also got another guy too, but yeah, I'm saying that they made small moves for they did.
I'm just kidding. You're just downplaying it. So Andrew Hammond's your new Carter Hart.
How do we know that Lou Lamoriello can't convince
Carter Hutton?
Carter Hutton, yeah, sorry.
How do we know Lou Lamoriello can't convince Erik Karlsson to sign there?
I'll tell you why. Because right now,
New York,
Matt Barzal, there's no good reason for Karlsson to do it. There's no players there.
Okay, this is what I think is the determining factor, and and what happened yesterday contributes. Yarmulson signed, McDonough signed, Ekman-Larsson signed, Doughty signed. The 2019 defensive bevy is gone. It's Erik Karlsson and Jake Gardner are the only two that are left.
Right.
And Erik Karlsson now can Erik Karlsson now.
Says hi.
Yeah,
it's not going to be in all likelihood a team that's on the verge of winning a Stanley Cup. I mean, except for Vegas, right? And we all think that that's not going to happen anyway.
The reason why Tavares didn't stay are the reasons Karlsson won't go there.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
There's no draw right now, Eck, and because of the way the arena situation is and everything else, what the Islanders are going to have to hope to do is let Trotz get some guys in there that are familiar with him. Let Lou get some guys in there that he's familiar with. But these are all going to be like secondary, third liner, fourth liner kind of guys. They're not going to get a big name free agent. They are not.
But by taking Bobby Ryan as well, doesn't that
taking Andrew Ladd? What does that help you in a year?
It's a 4-year albatross, Ack.
Oh, no, but I'm saying that by doing that, can't you possibly get Karlsson at a relatively
only if you sign Karlsson does it make any sense to take Bobby Ryan's 4 years? I mean, you got the empty cap
in your basement when you already have paneling there. Like it's not going to help.
Hang on. What if you get Karlsson? Say you can find a trade.
Right.
Let's look at Melnyk. If you're going to find a trade, you're trading Jordan Eberle. Because he fits into the Melnyk model. He's a UFA after this year. He's cheaper than Bobby Ryan.
Right.
You're basing it around Eberle, and you throw in a couple other things and a first-round pick.
I think Lou's got to concentrate on getting Anders Lee signed to a new deal.
Right.
Maybe as you said, Peter, Eberle's got 1 year at $6 million. Maybe he goes someplace as a sort of a rental, maybe a year-long rental. Right. If they don't think, he's got to do that. He got to lock up the players that you have and work from there, because I think chasing a playoff spot and this, the grandiose thing of getting Karlsson and Ryan, why would Lou take on $7.5 million times 4 years with Bobby Ryan and a guy who can't keep his fingers from breaking?
Well, you might, and you might do it if you can finagle something else in the
sure.
way. So say you get Karlsson and you're able to sign him, that's fine. Maybe Ottawa retains $2 million of Brian's.
Oh, this is Melnyk. He won't retain anything.
Bobby Ryan is not a horrible player. You have to replace.
I'm not saying he's horrible. You just can't stay healthy.
Yep, no, I know, but that's something maybe Lou thinks that
we're talking about ways to do it. Let's get back to the most sort of fundamental question here is, should he do it?
Right, that's what I'm saying. Should he do it?
Should he do it? That's the big question, and I'm not sure he should. Remember, he has no goaltender.
And then we'll end this. Because then we got to go. But if Karlsson was to say, I'm open to talking about an extension with you, and you can get an extension done, then do you do it?
Oh, it depends on what the deal was, yeah.
Yeah, not open to it. Will you agree to it? That, I mean, you can't take this on faith. I think there's a better chance of the Islanders trading for Panarin than there is for Carlson, because Panarin wants to go to a big market, like you said yesterday, Ak. And New York is New York and Brooklyn, perfect for a Russian-born player. Kuhlman and Grabovski went to Brooklyn because of that. So I think that's more likely.
Play for the Rangers. That's the only problem there. And
okay.
I think the Islanders are going to get Matt Martin because the Leafs already paid for him. So it's only a couple.
Yeah, I've heard. So this won't excite a lot of people in Islander land, but I was told that there's a possibility that Garrett Sparks gets traded to the Islanders. Yeah, and that's Garrett Sparks at 24 years old is a cheap goaltender. If you give him an opportunity, maybe he's the goalie of the future there.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of emotion in the Islander land, except for, Lou. I don't think he's all that emotional about this.
No, Lou's not emotional because now his plan B looks like to rebuild. I mean,
now he can rebuild the way he likes to rebuild. Anyway, all right, that's all the time we have, guys. Thanks so much. I've been playing a little bit of – I don't really believe that's a good trade either. I'm just playing a little devil's advocate for you guys. But I do think that it was an interesting topic to discuss for a second.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the Islanders have to try to – the Islanders are going to – you would think would be trying to do something interesting. And they've been really weirdly quiet about everything. So anyway,
Lou is methodical. That's the one thing. He's methodical. He will find ways to improve the team, but he's not going to rush to judgment. He's not going to do it right away.
Right. All right, and LeBron James isn't signing with anybody in the NHL anytime soon. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. And thank everybody. Remember, you can follow Kevin Allen at @ByKevinAllen. You really should be following him right now if you're not, because this is the time of year to follow Kevin Allen, if there ever was one. Because Kevin is one of the few people. I mean, I know, Kevin, you have a lake house like a lot of the other famous hockey writers have lake houses, but but you actually keep working. I'm seeing these tweets from like the LeBron, we're off for the year. See you guys in September.
Yeah, no, I work during the summer. That's for sure. So.
Yeah, so do we. So we're gonna keep going, guys, and Yep. It's going to be fun. There's so much that still has to happen. Jeff Skinner to Boston or San Jose. We still haven't even talked about that. But we'll get to that later. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you soon.